Alright, hello everyone. I think I got everything synced up. Alright, so now I'm watching the, it's been a while since I've actually recorded an episode of Dexter. I think I'm actually going to skip the previews. I'm just going to start Showtime Presents. It's the first time I actually skipped through an episode. Through previews. It's been a while since I've recorded one of these. I miss it. Let me move my mic closer. Like right there. And we move the big one over here. Should have had all this done already. So this is one thing I love about the newer Dexters, or Dexter, is putting the characters in these impossible situations. Like right here where, oh wow, dog starts barking now when I'm recording. Like right here when Dexter and Harrison finally meet, it's like, how do you write something like that? How do you convey such complex emotions? You know what I mean? So it's important. So I'm going to try and take it easy on, trying to really get into deeper psychological elements of the show. But here, having Harrison in Dexter's new apartment is very important. I would say for a storyteller, simply because this home represents, Dexter's sanctuary, or his internalized heart or whatever. Mostly, so now in the basement of this home, where Dexter's heart is, having Harrison there, has a type of emotional and psychological symbolism of, Dexter's reconnecting from his darkness into his light, represented through the conversation of Dexter and Harrison. So the fact that this conversation is taking place in this apartment really does show how intimate the conversation between the two of them is. Being in the basement really means that, Dexter's heart, his light heart, is more upstairs with Blessing and in his family, and the basement is more of Dexter's dark heart and his isolation and his loneliness and things like that. So this is like a baby step of Dexter's son, of his light taking baby steps back into his heart, and him ready to have this conversation. Ryan Foster. I love how names of characters just don't get lost in Dexter. Like Freebo was probably in like one episode, maybe, but he was talked about throughout the entire season, and it was like, I wonder if that actor got paid for all the times that is the significance of his character. I wonder if he got paid, every plot point. I love that they connect this flashback to Original Sin, to really link these together in the same universe, because you don't want to fall off in the whole, Original Sin doesn't even connect with the OG Dexter, you don't want to have that whole, maybe their alternate universes are all, you don't want that. So it's good that they have these connections. So now Dexter is talking about, that release that he went through, what it felt like to kill someone, and now his son Harrison is like, Nah, bro. Like I'm like in chains. I feel like I'm, in hell after going through this. He's feeling guilty. And Dexter's like, oh wow, we're really not alike. And now Dexter's, really trying to, I don't want to say grasp at straws, but, Dexter's trying to hit him with a sense of righteousness of, you did the right thing, this is right. And then the guilt of, you could have done the right thing, but something else could have happened, by trying to invite, doing the right thing in the conversation. It resonates, what can't the right thing properly grow in this moment or in this situation. And then that manifests in the dialogue of Harrison's character, and he's bringing up Aunt Deb and everything like that. So this also in this scene, as Dexter or Harrison is talking to Dexter about LaGuardia and everything, and Dexter's like, how do you know that name? How do you know that person? Um, yeah, that. Oh, he let me believe you were dead. I felt Harrison. I felt that. That was hard. Poor Harrison. But you see this weird triangulation of justice, light and dark, and them, spiraling together in this like threesome of Harrison, Dexter, and Batista. And you really see like, how are we going to really do this? How are we really going to get some closure on season 7 on LaGuardia? I love this watch. I love how Dexter grabs the watch and he says, I'll hold on to it for you. And he kind of like, eases his darkness like that. And I say that because that is a strong reference to Lumen in season 5, with the whole, you could say it's a stretch with with the Jordan Chase and his watch and everything. But also Dexter told Lumen, I'll hold on to your darkness for you. And then, you really see that trying to cleanse one's darkness or hold on to one's darkness for them. You see that be played out with Dexter and Lumen, and you kind of see it being repeated in this scene with Dexter and Harrison. So that really does show there's a strong emotional connection there, reference there between Dexter learning that he has this superpower in a sense, this ability to hold on to others' darkness for them and to say, I've held on to this for so long, I got you, I can help you get through it, in a sense. So I love that he uses his superpower that, he not only used for Lumen, but he also is using on Harrison, And I know I'm a little bit behind, but I love that when Harry says, it's going to take more than just a conversation, to connect to him. And Dexter's like, what do I do? And Harry says, I don't know. That's like, oh man, that's like, that really hits the father, that fatherhood heartstring, that father heartstring. But I love it. And I love that, Dexter and Harrison, Dexter doesn't know how to fully connect with Harrison right now. Like, Harrison has always been on his own. So, when he came back in New Blood and found Dexter, it was more like he was just on a journey and Dexter just happened to be a part of it. But Harrison actually accepting his father as being his father, I don't think it's something we've actually seen until, we don't see it. So, when Dexter's like, you can come stay with me, and he's like, what makes you think I want you in my life? It's like, yeah, the son never really accepted the father as the parent. And that's something that, a lot of us don't think about, We don't think about the fact that when we're parents and we have kids, we're like, oh, that's my kid, that's my child, everything's all good. But we never consider the fact that has our child gone through the processes looking up to us as a parent and saying, hey, I accept you as my parent, meaning these roles, I can give a healthy investment into those roles that I think only you can, evolve in me, or. And so we don't really think about that. A lot of times we just look at our children like, oh, you do what I say, whatever. And, we don't think about us as parents. What do we have to go through? Who do we have to become to find the light that our children actually represent in us? We clear a lot of darkness throughout our lives. And sometimes, the history stays with us, and we forget that we've cleansed it already from us. But we remember the history in our heart, So when our children are born, sometimes our children are born from the darkness that we've actually shed, but we don't know that we've shed it. And the history that we hold is just keeping it somewhat alive in us. But we've never fully, passed everything down to the next generation and things, So, sometimes we have to think, how do we get to that space where the best parts of who we are can connect to the light that our children actually represent, I don't know too much about Swan Lake, but I do know that Michael C. Hall did a lot of performing back in the past, so I know I wouldn't be surprised if he was somehow involved in a play of Swan Lake. So now we have Dexter with Mia, and I love this date so much. I love how Dexter's like a sore loser. Well, he's also an Aquarius, so Aquarius don't like to be wrong. They don't like to lose. That's from my experience. I've literally had discussions with Aquariuses, and I've agreed with them, and they still argued about me agreeing with them. But yeah. Anyway, I love how yeah, I love her talking about family here. But what I really love about this date is not just the bowling part, but I love the kind of the reference, not reference, but like the weird mirroring of Lila, of Lila's character. I really think that Lila should have been left alive. And I think she would have been perfect for Resurrection. Honestly, it would have been amazing if Dexter and Lila met each other, and it would have been like this, those psychotic tendencies, those parts of Lila that were empty, that that she tried to fake in the world, all that, all the her trying to seek some kind of connection, but couldn't find it, seeking chaos. I feel like the path that Dexter is in this season really is the path of Lila. And I feel like Dexter and Lila would have been amazing as a duo in Resurrection, and in finding a sense of, hey, there's still hope that, just because you're crazy or you're having a hard time connecting, or, you're going through all this stuff, there's still hope that you can find connection, you can better yourself, you can grow, you can become better. When Lila was the sponsor, what she had to offer Dexter, the advice she had to offer was amazing. And I really, really feel like she should have lived at the end of season 2. I don't think she should have died, because what she had to offer, I don't think Dexter fully learned that lesson in season 2. And that's why it always felt off to me when she died. I always felt like something's not right about the end of season 2, So I don't think Lila should have died. So when I see Mia, I'm like, okay, I can see little sprinkles in there. And I'm just like, But as a storyteller myself, it bothers me. I feel like Lila was a wasted potential for a resurrection. Weird to say, yeah, but yeah. Anyway, I love. I think her name is Claudette. I love Claudette, and I love Claudette, the character, the detective. I've never seen her in any other movie or show that I remember. I love the psychology of this character right in this scene because the way she looks at him, the way, she's like, I have the feeling that, future behavior is past behavior. There's like two triggers that she does. The first trigger is, trying to pressure this dude who's obviously nervous, and then the way she slowly moves the paper to him and she tries to say something wise really puts his mind at a, why does this girl think she's so smart kind of thing. It's a weird, these tiny little mental jabs that she's doing with her psychology to really like be seen as the bad guy, be seen as a bad person. And then hopefully this can kind of get him to get frustrated and slip up and say something, and then when he says guilty, she's like, oh, that's an interesting use of a word. Like she's really focused on, she's really, really focused, and she's in the zone and she knows what's up. She's basically like Dokes. Yeah, she's the Dokes reincarnated. She's focused. Or LaGuerta, yeah. I don't know, the offspring of both of them. This woman, she stood out to me very, very much. I'm going to talk about her, so, what I like about this scene, I feel like this scene was important because I think Peter Dinklage Leon only had 3 scenes in this episode. I could be wrong, he could have more. But I really do enjoy that we get a side of his character. Who is this character? We're still like, there's still like a big mystery to who he is, why he does what he does, and even when he does reveal something, there seems to be another layer of a secret, so it's like, who really is, this character? What really does he represent? What's his whole deal, And it's curious because at some point, what is his real thing? Like, if the character says, this is why I do what I do, or there's an assumption, it's like, is that something that the audience can accept? Is that something that we can accept? But also, is that something that is true to that character, or is he just desperate to try and find something or connect with something, and he's just using this as an excuse? It's like, so it's like, yeah, what is his whole deal? And if he does explain what his deal is that going to be, like another mask to, is that just going to be another layer, and there's something even more deeper, so it's interesting. I love this invitation, Mia's proposal. She offers doing a kill together. This really does get to the bigger point of, and that's another reason why I love this show, is the show. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, Miguel and Lumen, they weren't really real killers. Oh, Dexter, his head's in the clouds. So yeah, she asked. Killed over 150 serial killers. Wow. I did want to, or well, I guess I could bring that up. Prudence, that's her name, and Constance. That's what I was thinking. Constance and Prudence. So yeah, Prudence falling right now. This was a very intense scene. This was very intense between Prudence and Blessing. I actually want to listen to this scene again. I apologize for those who are listening to the audio only version on like YouTube. I do want to hear this scene again because it was a really good scene. I'm going to be silent for about a minute. Alright, well, I won't deny you the luxury of silence. I'll talk a little bit more. But it does not change God's plan. This episode it really does cut deep in the heart, simply because it does talk about the reality of, dealing with your parent and loss, and she says she's looked into the eyes of good and evil. She's lived a remarkable life, and she doesn't want to end it in a room with machines and doctors, and just want to live the rest of your life and your days out with your family, with the people that you love. That's how you want to go out. You want to go out. You want to go out happy. You want to go out in the best of who you are, the best feelings of who you are. The best of who you are, not the worst, not when you're miserable or sad. You really want to find a place where you can be happy and be with those who you really care about and really love, and indulge in those great moments before you pass on. When the afterlife comes, it's not like you're going to be worried about your rent or your bills or anything like that. It's like death doesn't care about all that stuff. But, death can be beautiful if you have beautiful people in your life and you feel like you've lived a beautiful life, then death can have a completely different definition altogether. I really did pick that up pretty strong in this episode. I love how Charlie's talking with her mom and everything, and she balances her life out in so many ways, and that really does bring another layer to what the show is about, which is not just about this Dexter, this serial killer, struggling. It's this idea of this thing that Dexter has. It's something that we, almost all of us has, which is why we connect so much with the show. I mean, we all have our own different thing that we do, but it's just serial killer part of Dexter is just like but it's something that we all have. We all have that other side to us that we feel like we can't share with the world. That there's that superhero side and our human regular side. There's that spiritual side to us, even if we're a spiritual teacher or mentor, or we own a gym, versus our home life if we're an actor or if we work in the movie industry or something, versus our family at home. It's like there's different lives, and so I really love that scene with Charlie and her mom and in the hospital. it's a reminder of that. Of it's not just Dexter that's struggling with this. It's others in life who are there's others points of views that are struggling with all of this. Dexter just called Harrison, and I remember I had this conversation. I remember having this conversation with my mom. She said she wanted to give me space, and she tried to connect with me, and she tried to connect and have everything right, but it's like who I was, who I am, is something that she just couldn't, quite get to or fathom, I guess. And so, just like what Harrison was saying earlier in the episode, his parent Dexter tried, to touch and nurture something dark in him, which I think, anyway, I think he said that earlier in this episode, or maybe he says it later, I don't remember, but he does mention that, about the parent nurturing something that was dark in the child. And and I've talked about this in the past, about how a lot of times a parent can be that conduit, that thing that really does pull those dark seeds inside of us, and they end up embodying it. Sometimes, closing your eyes and just thinking, I love this scene with Dexter and Mia. Dexter slowly starting to open up. We've all had that woman, But I love that she's always wearing red. She's always wearing the red ever since we first meet her. She's, the red. But I like how she's wearing the red with some black spots. It really shows a lot about where her character's at right now, in full balance. I also like how you see I guess she calls it the legs coming down the wine glass. It's almost as if she's like a spider trying to, a Black Widow, about black and red, Clearly have a type. This actress who plays Mia, she did this role very well. I don't know what. Maybe she's just that good. I don't know. But this level of intensity, in her face, in her movements, in her eyes, it looks like, that's real pain right there. She took something from a real place, and she let it come out as she had to have. Most of these actors, even with Lowell, with Neil Harris. Oh no, Dexter's my battery was just full. Okay, well, I do gotta go get my charger, so I will return. Okay. Alright. Sorry about that. I apologize for that hiatus. I did, my battery was full before I started this episode, which was like 30 minutes ago. So, it is rather interesting that my battery died so quick. But this scene right here, when Dexter and Mia are talking, I'm sure we've all been there before. I'm sure, even as a young man, we have that one woman who, we started to kind of open up a little bit in certain ways, certain areas, and, she helped bring something out in us, and, even with the wine glass, with her telling Dexter, close your eyes, and she's teaching him about the wine. She's really, like every one of these characters in the season seems to be a test of temptation in some way for Dexter. And it's like Dexter's really having to resist temptation on so many levels. And every one of these characters seems to represent a temptation of some sort. And she seems to be a romantic temptation, but maybe even a lustful temptation, So now Dexter's being tested on, can you really overcome a sense of lust, But lust, can be a shadow side of, romance or love. And, Mia has that ability, well, most, I guess temptresses do. They have that gift to where it's not just the lust and, but it's also the intimacy, that's the ability to to help someone be more intimate and find intimacy in life and in everyday things and be like, oh, wow, you can really help enrich my life in so many ways. Life is kind of bland, but, when you have the right woman, she can give you the right seasoning, to life. And Mia is really potent in doing that, with the wine glasses and teaching Dexter a lot of things. And it's just, the light and shadow side, of love and, love. Yeah, Dexter, you're a tease. Give me all murder, Horny. Oh, I guess I'll see you at Prater's. Got messed up, Dexter. Play it cool, Dexter, and don't let her escape. I don't think, how many women have Dexter actually killed? Well, yeah, he's got a fair amount. He's got a couple. It's just like, Dexter seems to let all the women go when I think about it. But no, he got a few of them. Like Zoe Kruger, the police officer in season 4. Then there's a nurse, and yeah. One, two, three. Kill. One enough. Yeah. Oh wow, really? That's what the name of this song is. I love how. I wonder if that exit sign. I want to say the exit sign being in frame of the camera is on purpose. Because, like, something's trying to warn this dude to leave, to get out. But this is the first time, I believe this is the first time that we see Mia, at least in this episode, wearing a black shirt. Usually she's wearing red, but now she's wearing black. And that's really like, That's like that deceptive, because when she's wearing the red, that's when she's the most like honest, it seems like, and darker and on, just truthful. But now when she takes her coat off, like her being a predator, just stalking her prey or whatever, is when she has her red coat on. That's like her real nature, is when she's wearing the red. And then when she takes it off at the table and she's wearing black in front of the gentleman here, that shows that she's trying to lure him, and that's more of she's in her deceptive mode. And I like that attention to detail and color. Intimacy can be quite a thing, huh? A lot of times people confuse intimacy with, I think, love. Love, even, or even willpower, or even will. There's no intimacy is really diving into the altered reality of what something else is fully. And any kind of expectation you may have, intimacy doesn't offer expectation. It offers the truth of what one or maybe both parties hold, and intimacy amplifies it, completely removing or taking one or multiples out of their current state of awareness or even reality. That's what intimacy really is. I love that. I love that Dexter accent. The night comedy of Dexter's, Jersey, New York accent or whatever, or his accent, Jersey accent is a good little comedy relief. And then we jump straight to this dude just hung up. I was going to look for the names of each one of those tools and actually tell you guys listening, give you, a name of what every single tool was, and what they do, what they're used for. I was going to do that, and this opportunity to record this episode came out of nowhere, so I didn't have enough time to fully do the research on it yet, or fully get all of the names for all of it, get all of my notes together properly, and pause the frame and say instrument by instrument by instrument. I just don't have enough time, but I do apologize for not doing that. I try to give you something that makes it worth listening to these things. I love how they actually give you some time with Dexter's accent too. It wasn't just oh hey yeah, just saw Freebo, man. He just was over here. No, I ain't coming in. They actually gave Dexter a few lines with this accent. He's a performer. He's a really good performer. Though I did wonder, why is my video skipping? Whatever. I was wondering, why was this detective on the case for this situation, because if she's like homicide or whatever, why would she actually be there? But I guess it's for the watch. I guess I saw the watch, and I don't know. I'm having a hard time understanding. Or is she? I think she's a lieutenant, isn't she? Or I don't know. I just wondered why would she be there, but it's something I'm missing. This is what I was going to say earlier about this episode. Oh, that's why the episode looks so weird. I'm not on full screen. I was wondering why the episode was recording was so small. Leslie Stahl. She actually plays herself in a couple of series. She's a real reporter. I believe she's on CBS. I don't know if she's still on CBS, but I know she was there in like 1997. I forgot for how long, but yes, this woman, something really stood out about her and the way she acted, the way she presented herself on screen, and that's really her. That's really her. Yes, that's her name. She's a real reporter. So yeah, it was nice, nice seeing her. I love how this dude just has all this food in front of him. Like he must love food. You know, it must be his itch, his scratch for his itch. I love so this scene right here with Batista. You know, we see him witnessing this. You know, of why is this random girl getting. Why is this random girl being framed? So now Batista sees a different side of, what's going on right now, because he knows what's up, but now that, this random girl gets in trouble for this murder, now Batista's like, I understand, I get it, what he's doing. But it's like, man, Batista, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? A lot of people says Batista is just a Walking Dead. That Batista's just going to die, because he's going to get killed. But I don't think so, because that would... I don't think Batista is going to... I don't think he should even die, because of what he represents to the story. And I don't think... I think the cycle does have to break at some point, but I am curious to see what's going to happen with that, with him. This scene right here, Dexter and Harrison talking. For once, Dexter is finally open and honest about something we don't see. We don't see this too often in the Dexter series. It's always Dexter... Just like earlier with Lady Vengeance, with Mia, when Dexter gets into his head for a bit, and then he says something, and someone else talks over him, and they talk at the same time, and Dexter's like, oh, and then he changes his mind and says something completely different. That was like the first time that Dexter caught himself, but he still went through with what he wanted to say to her. I do apologize for not saying that earlier, So, that really does show the growth that Dexter has gone through and really feeling more secure of himself as a character. And really being more secure and being vulnerable with speaking the truth. Speaking the truth, a lot of people are scared to speak the truth. A lot of people will lie simply to control the narrative of a situation, And... it seems like that's something that Dexter did a lot, was he always knew how to pick parts of the truth, parts of truths, and, but was never fully open and honest. And so I love this scene that Dexter is open, with Harrison, and he's really allowing the light to come back in. This was something that Jordan Chase helped Dexter out with in season 5, when Dexter takes the stage. But I love how in this instance Dexter kind of goes to that point on his own and is very vulnerable with his internalized light. And by being vulnerable and open and honest, he allowed the light to come back in. A lot of times people are scared because they're like, oh, if I'm vulnerable and, if I'm just invulnerable, then I can't defend myself, and that's when all the danger comes in, that's when all the bad stuff comes in. But what a lot of people don't understand is when you're vulnerable, you also allow light and healing to come in as well. It goes both ways. It goes, multiple ways. And, right here you see Dexter truly vulnerable. and truly honest. The thing that's been missing for a very, very long time. And, I love how Harrison's like, when Dexter gets into that space, that's when he intimately connects with the son. And a lot of times when we have children, we get into this space where we feel a certain thing about our child, and we're like, oh my gosh, I miss them, or, I long for them, or something like that. And we feel a very strong, intense feeling toward them. But, the moment's kind of messed up or something, but then, or, we feel very powerful love for our children, in these weird moments. And it's like, sometimes that's a reminder of what they truly mean, of what's truly, the relationship between us all the time. But, sometimes things go wrong, and then we remember what the real love between us is. And then all of a sudden, things get better. They're in the house again, and we go right back to being that terrible person we were before, and, it mean, that light that we had when we connected with our child, that light is something to be sustained, like, most of the time, because light is usually who our child is, what our child is at the base of who they are. Sometimes that light isn't an effort; it's effortless, I also wanted to say, I'm going to the end credits now. Wow, that was a quick episode. But I also want to say about this episode, whenever Dexter has like a dark connection with somebody, he mentions food, like with Hannah in season 7 when Jurg had Hannah held hostage, and so Dexter always mentions food, or let's get a bite to eat or something, when he's like in his dark, intimate space. So you see him early in this episode mention to not Cody, Jack's character, Harrison, hey, this will get a bite to eat. And Harrison's like, what, are you crazy? I'm not going to eat right now. And then, in the middle of the episode, Mia suggests to Dexter, let's go get something to eat, after they bond for the first time. So that really showed how intimate he was with her. But yeah, I think as young men, we've all had a Mia in our lives. I've had one for sure. She brought so much intimacy out, and beauty and vulnerability out in me, and then turned out she wasn't who she told me she was. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and have a great day.